93.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachuku, and these are the top stories. Nnamdi Kanu wants to negotiate with federal government over terrorism-related charges. APC writes federal government to declare state of emergency in Rivers. IGP condemns Rivers crisis, orders investigation amid heightened security. And Fashola speaks on current minimum wage. Details now. The world news at 6 begins with the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, indicating his willingness to engage in negotiations with the federal government through his lead counsel, Aloy Ejimako. This move is pursuant to Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act, which encourages amicable settlement and reconciliation among parties. Kanu, through his legal counsel, made this known today after he moved two applications brought before the court. The first application is to move Form 49 and an application objecting to the jurisdiction of the court. Ejimako said if the applications are denied, they will move for the implementation of Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act. However, the federal government's counsel, Adegboyega Awomolo, clarified that he lacks the authority to negotiate on behalf of the government and instead suggested that Kanu's team should approach the Attorney General of the Federation. Now, Justice Binta Inyako emphasized that the court's role is to hear cases and not to solicit negotiations. Kanu, as you do know, has been in DSS custody since June 2021, facing terrorism-related charges leveled against him by the federal government. During the court session, Kanu also addressed recent violence in the southeast region, vehemently denying involvement in the killings of soldiers in Abia State. He reiterated IPOB's commitment to non-violence, expressing sorrow over the loss of lives. According to Nnamdi Kanu, he says, and I quote, "We are fighting for freedom," Kanu asserted. "So how can we want violence? We want people to be free." He further condemned all forms of killings and emphasized the need for Africa to assert itself positively in the global arena. According to him, we have suffered a lot, from slavery in Arabia, Europe, and now slavery in America. Let's take a listen to Nnamdi Kanu today.
I want my understand. I want my understand. Because IPOB was founded on a non-violent principle, and we maintain that up until this very day. And everything, of course, and some of these soldiers, we are told, are also our people. Is that correct? Yes. And the family is now in mourning. Yes. So all the making of young widows is condemned in entirety. I don't want it. I don't want anybody to die. Yes. We are fighting for freedom. Then how can we fight for this at the same time? It's not possible. We want people to be free. That's what we're fighting for. Nothing more. We've suffered a lot in Africa. I don't know if you know that. Africans have suffered from slavery in Arabia to slavery in Europe to slavery in America. So I think we should focus our time and devote it towards making sure that this continent stands up to what God promised it is going to be. And that's why we're doing what we are doing.
Thank you.
Party in Rivers State has urged President Bola Tinubu to declare a state of emergency in the state. The APC made this call in reaction to the committee of the APC in Rivers. Chief Tony Okocha said Rivers State is at war and the dramatist personnel who are responsible for the mayhem that has claimed lives are known. The governor is helpless. The police is helpless. Therefore, the APC in Rivers State is calling for a state of emergency as a way of taming the mayhem and the upsurge that is going on in the state. I call on the federal government to act fast in this regard. This call by the APC is coming shortly after Governor Fubara swore in newly appointed caretaker chairman for the 23 local government areas of the state. This event took place this morning at the Government House in Port Harcourt, the capital of the state, amidst high-level security measures being put in place. The appointment of the caretaker committee chairman was made a day following the submission of the list to the State House of Assembly, which is currently under the leadership of Speaker Victor Jumbo. It should be mentioned that the federal government has the authority to declare a state of emergency in the face of a natural disaster, civil disorder, military conflict, disease outbreak, epidemic, or any other threat to public health and safety. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Adeolu Egbetoku, has condemned in the strongest terms a recent outbreak of violence and subsequent breakdown of law and order at various local government council secretariats in Rivers State. The crisis in Rivers State resulted in supporters of two political factions clashing over the tenure of local government council chairman, which unfortunately led to the tragic death of a police officer, Inspector David Ngada, and Samuel Inwigwe, a vigilante member at Eberi Omuma in Omuma local government area. In response to these heinous acts, the IGP, in a statement by force spokesperson ACP Olumuyiwa Adejobi, has directed the Commissioner of Police in Rivers State, CP Olatunji Disu, to heighten security measures across the state and institute thorough investigations into the killing of the police officer and the vigilante operative, as well as the general violence which erupted in the state. The IGP specifically deployed operatives of the Force Intelligence Response Team to assist the Rivers State Command in apprehending the killers of the police officer and the vigilante member. IGP Egbetoku warned individuals and groups of people who have a penchant for senseless attacks and mindless killings of police officers and other security operatives across the country to desist forthwith, as the fullest force of the law will be meted on them. And still on the world news at 6, in a recent development, the former Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, has stated that the National Assembly might have acted unconstitutionally by confusing salary for wage. He explained that the National Assembly only has the power to legislate on wage which is paid hourly and not salary which is paid monthly. Speaking via a Monitor television program on Tuesday, the former governor argued that in other jurisdictions where the minimum wage was applicable, amendments to increase them do not necessarily translate to massive distortions across the salary compensation scheme. He noted, and I quote, "The extant law on minimum wage is the National Minimum Wage Act 2019, which came into force on the 18th of April 2019, and it provides in Section 3, subsection 4, that the national minimum wage expires after 5 years, and it shall be reviewed in line with the provisions of this act." Fashola therefore stated that it seems obvious from this definition that by making a law in Section 3, subsection 1 of the Minimum Wage Act that the minimum wage of 30,000 naira shall be paid monthly, the National Assembly may have acted unconstitutionally by legislating on a salary monthly payment when they only have power to legislate on wages and hourly payment. He stated that it is important that the conversation on minimum wage is being had in 2024 because in Section 3, subsection 4, the minimum wage shall be reviewed in line with the provisions of this Act, which includes Section 3, subsection 1, that has prescribed a monthly amount instead of an hourly wage. You're currently listening to the World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. It's, of course, after the short break, we'll head into our news analysis segment where we'll be joined by Barrister Fred Nzako, who will definitely have to give us more insight into some questions that'll be posed at him. Just stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're still on the World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. I'm joined by Barrister Fred Nzako. Barrister Fred Nzako, good evening and thank you for joining us on the World News at 6.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you so much, sir. Barrister Fred, the decision of the federal government to continue with the trial of Nnamdi Kanu for terrorism-related charges, some say is legally expedient, but it is a prolonged matter that has created tension surrounding the continued detention of the leader. And of course, we do know that the leader is fighting for the liberation of the indigenous people of Biafra movement. And quite a lot of talk has come on concerning his incarceration since 2021, or rather, some analysts will say he was kidnapped from Kenya. Well, let's start up with the development today. Just this afternoon, Nnamdi Kanu appeared in court at 12 noon, and we were waiting to hear what the court has to say. But apparently, the leader is seeking, or rather has stated his willingness to engage in negotiations with the federal government through his lead counsel, Aloy Ejimako, and that was made known today. Now, Ejimako said if the applications are denied, they will move for the implementation of Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act. First of all, before I proceed with my question, what is Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act?
Well, the Federal High Court Act in Section 17 provides that litigants before the court are also at liberty to settle their matters out of court.
Okay.
And that is premised on the ground that the court is an impartial arbiter in any matter. And the litigants are the main action, dramatic personnel in any case. So if the litigants on their own desire to settle out of court, the court does not work against it. As a matter of fact, that also presupposes that alternative dispute resolution mechanism can be ignited at any point before judgment is delivered in court on any matter. The court is not averse to settlement out of court. What is important is that there is settlement, and such settlement will be reported to the court, and it will be entered as a consent judgment.
All right, but in responding to Nnamdi Kanu's proposal, the counsel to the federal government, that is Adegboyega Awomolo, he clarified that he lacks the authority to negotiate on behalf of the government, that instead he advised Nnamdi Kanu to approach the Attorney General of the Federation for such negotiations. Meanwhile, Justice Binta Inyako emphasized the court's role as a forum for hearing cases, right, and that the court is not a solicitor. So if this agenda, or if this prospect was actually on the table, why has it not been considered for a while? Why did it come up today? Why did it not seek to solicit with the Attorney General of the Federation at the time, so that this case could have been politically resolved, just like the case of the Mieti Kautau Haure guy?
From all indications, there seem to be difficulties in going ahead with prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu, and that difficulty can be seen in the series of adjournment and in the series of amendment to the charges brought against him by the federal government through the SSS. And I must make bold to say that it is never too late in time to move on the right path. If one is moving on a wrong direction, it is never too late to change the direction and move on the right direction. And I want to also say that the senior advocate Adegboyega Awomolo, who said that he does not have the authority to negotiate on with Nnamdi Kanu with respect to political solution to the trial, is correct, because he is holding brief on behalf of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. So unless and until the Attorney General gives him direct and specific delegated authority to negotiate on his behalf, and which ipso facto means on behalf of the federal government, and it's only at that time that he can now negotiate. It does not mean that he cannot negotiate, but he needs an authority from the Attorney General and Minister for Justice to enter into such a negotiation. And he is also correct by saying that the idea of such a negotiated settlement should be with the office of the Attorney General, and not with he as a counsel for the government in that matter. In which case, not he as the prosecutor, but the office of the Attorney General.
Barrister Fred Nzako, on July 2019, Showore, via his microblogging handle, announced the hashtag Revolution Now while communicating the commencement date via a graphic post. This was, to press a 5-point demand to garner widespread attention. Can you hear me, Barrister Fred?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Now, I want to take your mind back to the fact that Showore was arrested at his Lagos residence on August 3rd, 2019 by 1:25 a.m. He was charged to court for treasonable and money laundering felonies after being in detention for 45 days. And then the breakdown of the court charges against him from the federal government were quite lengthy. But the thing is that on August 3rd, 2019, he was arrested. And on the same 2019, December 24th, Omoyele Showore was eventually released. So he was granted bail. So why is Nnamdi Kanu's case taking this long? If the federal government does not have any sustainable evidence to continue keeping him in detention, then what exactly is the problem? I want you to recall that just today in court, Nnamdi Kanu distanced himself from the killing of Nigerian soldiers. In fact, he actually stated that IPOB is not all about killing. They are peaceful people. They're only negotiating for their freedom. So if the federal government doesn't have anything tenable to continue his detention, what exactly is prolonging this matter?
The case of Omoyele Showore was typically a case of unnecessary high-handedness by the federal government of President Muhammadu Buhari because they initially misunderstood what he meant by revolution now.
Okay.
And then there was an argument whether the revolution was to be a revolution of the mind or a physical revolution that would involve a push of the federal government and pushing down of the government. And government frantically ran to court and charged Showore of trying to undermine the sovereignty of Nigeria. And it was very obvious that even the 45 days that he was kept in detention was illegal. And now bring it down to that of Nnamdi Kanu. It has become also obvious that Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's continued incarceration has been seen to be illegal act by the federal government, and that Nnamdi Kanu should be let off the hook. Now, the issue of why the matter of a political solution has not been found all this while, of course, negotiation will involve two people. The team of Nnamdi Kanu had always been ready for negotiation, political negotiation, so because they want their client out of detention, and they had also been pursuing it in a multiple approach, whereby while they are asking for negotiation, they are also meeting up with their responsibilities in court. And they have done that not once, not twice, not thrice, and that is why so many courts have given judgment and orders that Nnamdi Kanu should be released. It is the duty of the federal government to obey the lawful orders of court. And now that the government, as on its own, is ready for negotiation, at all times, like I said, the court will never be against negotiation between two litigants.
All right.
And if that will end up with understanding and end up with a release of Nnamdi Kanu, that is what everybody has been asking for.
Okay, so Barrister Fred Nzako, as it stands now, with what was resolved today, which is the whole negotiation process, it means that the court did not tell us if his matter has been adjourned. He's still within the DSS custody. We did not hear any reprieve. We didn't hear anything about his bail condition. At this moment, we're still waiting to hear if the court is going to grant him bail or not. So does it mean the bail condition conversation did not take place today, and rather Nnamdi Kanu's legal team came up with a negotiation with the federal government, where of course the court advised him to meet with the Attorney General of the Federation? So with this, what does this mean? If no date was given for another hearing, will we hear a response from the Attorney General of the Federation before we hear of any more appearance in court?
The dynamics has changed. The position of the litigants have changed. Now, Nnamdi Kanu's team is poised towards negotiation, and from all indications, the team from the federal government is not against negotiation. Rather, the prosecutor, as Chief Awomolo, has only said that he lacked the competent, or rather the authority to negotiate, because he has not received such delegated authority from the Attorney General. Once he has that authority, both teams will now go into negotiation, and then every matter will stand still. The court will stand down the matter until the negotiation is completed, and the report of negotiation will be brought to the court. And once both parties have agreed and signed their negotiation, the court will have nothing more other than to adopt their agreement as a consent judgment, and that becomes the judgment of the court. And then everything that they discussed and negotiated and agreed will now be the things to be implemented. And that is why you did not see any further move with respect to on the issue of his bail or the issue of his prosecution or trial, because the dynamics has changed, and the court, because it is a court of law and an impartial arbiter in matters like this, the court will naturally stand down and expect the litigants to exhaust the process of negotiation, because that is that may be the way forward.
Finally, let me not use the word finally. I would like us to go into Rivers State, but before we go there, right, the Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic government in exile is one who says he's been fighting for self-referendum for Biafrans globally, and that they're all about fighting for the self-determination, the freedom of Biafrans. But if you check his X handle, what the pictures that are being posted there, it doesn't reflect what Nnamdi Kanu is fighting for. For example, with what Nnamdi Kanu said in court today, that IPOB is a peaceful group. They're all about finding their own ingenuity, their independence, right? And the right for them to own. So if Simon Ekpat supposedly says that he's fighting for something similar to what Nnamdi Kanu is fighting for, if you go to his account, the kind of pictures there and uploads, don't you think it's rather complicating issues for Nnamdi Kanu as well? If at all the court may want to grant him any form of clemency or clear off his charges?
Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa are not on the same page.
Okay.
They are also not on the same direction. Nnamdi Kanu is the face and the leader of IPOB.
Okay.
And he has professed several times that they are against violence, and that IPOB will never adopt violence in their approach. Nnamdi Kanu has also at all times condemned the resort of violence, and he had urged that anybody who believes in their philosophy and ideology of self-determination should not adopt violence. And that is why they have been asking for a referendum, so that they will follow in international statutes, so that they will now determine whether their future and whether they will remain in Nigeria or not. They have never had a resort to violence.
Okay.
Unlike Simon Ekpa, who has been accused by many as a criminal agent sitting down in Finland and causing problem in the southeast.
But Barrister, he has a lot of supporters. He has people who are actually clamoring for what he's doing. He has a lot of supporters.
Let me land, Esther, because of his utterances and his actions, which he have said that he posted terrible and horrible images on his X handle. And I can tell you that those images do not represent what IPOB has represented. Because IPOB has said so. I mean, Simon Ekpa cannot come down to Nigeria and continue the kind of thing he's doing. And that is why we have urged the government to put every machinery in motion to bring Simon Ekpa to justice. Because Simon Ekpa represents crime and not freedom fighting.
All right. Barrister Fred, well, eventually, Justice Binta Nyako gave an order which is invoking the court's power under Section 17 of the Federal High Court. And they are directing the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, and Nnamdi Kanu to actually explore a political solution and reconciliation in the ongoing terrorism trial. Do we think Lateef Fagbemi will consider this particular approach?
I believe that as a chief law officer of the Federation, he is a key man who is saddled the responsibility to ensure that there is respect for the rule of law.
Okay.
If the court has made such pronouncements, it is expected that the chief law officer of the Federation will give it a positive thought. And more so when the team of Nnamdi Kanu is also thinking in the same direction. So the court will just stand askance and expect both parties, both the prosecuting counsel and the defending counsel and the defense counsel, to sit down together and iron out issues that will lead to a political solution. Yes, there will be give and take. Conditions will be given and conditions will be taken. But at the end of the day, what is most important is that there is a respect for the fundamental rights of the citizen of Nnamdi Kanu, and the fundamental respect for the rule of law as pronounced by the various courts, and that we continue to obey what is enshrined in our constitution. I think the Attorney General will be positive in that regard.
All right. Well, as it stands now, Nnamdi Kanu's legal team did not object this particular move, and of course, Awomolo told the court as well that they're not going to dispute the negotiation process. So, if the prosecutor does not mind this political solution, then that means there could be something good that may come out of this at the end of the day, possibly as soon as possible. Should we consider things to go that way?
Absolutely, it is a signpost that there is light at the end. There will be light by the end of the tunnel. People have cried at all times and at various fora and in many places that Nnamdi Kanu should not be persecuted. And the optics of persecution is not good in a civilian democracy that we profess to practice. And also when there are judgments and orders of competent and superior courts in the land that have said he should be let off the hook. Yes, I believe that if this matter started under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it would have been resolved a long time ago, because President Tinubu is a Democrat, and he is one man who does not want to disobey the law. You can see that he is a listening president. He is one president who, when it is people that he is leading, his people cry, he listens, and he adjusts his programs. He has done that several times just because he is a listening president. And the cry about Nnamdi Kanu's continued incarceration has gotten to his ears. And I want to believe very strongly a directive to the Attorney General and Minister for Justice to go ahead with and conclude this political negotiation towards bringing this issue to a meaningful, logical conclusion. I want to believe so, and I hope it will happen very soon.
All right, Barrister, before I let you go, in Rivers State, do you think the ongoing situation there is being deliberately done so that a state of emergency will be declared? The APC is asking for a state of emergency to be declared in Rivers State. The Inspector General of Police has actually called for investigations into the shootout that transpired yesterday. So, with all that is going on in Rivers State, could this be some machinations from possibly Wike's camp or maybe the opposition political party to make Fubara seem like he literally may not have the spine to take control of state of affairs in Rivers, and then deploy the federal government's executive act in taking over responsibilities in Rivers State? What's your take on that in a minute, please?
When two women were brought before King Solomon of the Old, that they were tussling for ownership of a baby. One woman asked the king to cut the baby into two. The other woman asked the king to preserve the life of the baby because of the love she has for her baby. And incidentally, the king used his wisdom to determine who actually was the owner or the mother of that baby. Any person who asks for state of emergency in his state has exposed himself as not loving his state and as not wanting peace in his state. And such a person wants anarchy. That is why his acting can be likened to that woman who wanted King Solomon to cut the baby into two. Use your tongue to count your teeth and know who loves River State and who does not.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzakwa, I sincerely do appreciate your input on the World News at 6. Thank you so much for giving us your insights.
Many thanks.
And now to wrap up the world news at 6 here again are the top stories. Nnamdi Kanu seeks negotiation with federal government over terrorism-related charges. APC writes federal government to declare state of emergency in Rivers. IGP condemns Rivers crisis, orders investigation amid heightened security. And Fashola speaks on minimum wage. That's a wrap on the world news at 6 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachuku. Good evening and thank you for listening.